walk amongst us. You've witnessed their performances, you've celebrated their talent and cheered them on throughout the years. But do you know how they got there? Their trials and tribulations, their struggles and hurdles, and their determination, which has led to their success. Welcome to My Art, My Story, a web series brought to you by Arts and Culture Initiative of South Asia, also known as ACISA, where we sit down with your favorite local artists and get to know their story and journey a little better. I'm your host, I'm Dylan, and today we're getting to know Raavi The Band. Hi guys, how's it going?
Hi, Amin. How are you?
Very well. How are you?
Hi everyone. Okay, let's get to meet you all individually. So let's go down and introduce yourselves.
So I'm Hayan Tariq. I'm the guitarist and producer for Raavi and one of the founders.
My name is Ahmed. I'm one of the lead singers for the band.
And I'm Awais. I'm also a singer and one of the founders for the band.
I'm Serbilan and I'm the bassist for the band.
My name is Tabish. I am the drummer of the band.
My name is Ramiz. I play guitars for the band.
Amazing. So there we go, the introduction to all of you individually. Now, how did we all come together and form this band? What's the origin story?
So we started in 2019, just before the pandemic. I met Hayan through a mutual friend. And there's a funny story. Our mutual friend was getting married and he was looking for a singer and a guitarist. So he reached out to me and he said, I'm looking for a singer. And I thought maybe I'll give it a shot. It's a wedding. They were only doing 2 songs. We've performed there. We've actually had good chemistry because we were in the same kind of music. And we started doing music and then the pandemic hit, right? So it kind of gave us that flexibility of staying home and we're not commuting to work anymore, so a little more time. And so we started hanging out more and doing more music, and we formed this band. And then when we started it was just the 2 of us, and now you can see there's 6 of us that could barely fit in this room.
I know, I love it.
And it's formed into this excellent team. Everyone brings in a lot of value, and we have different instruments. We have 2 singers now in the band. And we've done a lot of original work. So actually we'll talk about that in a bit, but we released our original song, the first one last year. In February. Thank you. February 2022. And most of the work was done during the pandemic. Hayan can speak more about that. But now we've formed into this 6-person band, and it's a short time when you think about 2020 and 2019, and a lot happened during this time and happened very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of our story.
Okay, so many questions. So let's backtrack there. So I get that 2 of you met because of a mutual friend's wedding, came together, said, oh, we like music, let's do this. But it's a pandemic, and then finding other people and making sure you all kind of mesh and everyone has a place in the band. That's difficult. So what was the process like actually finding everyone?
So it was a little bit funny to start with because, like always said, we met because of a second friend, and we were both very new. So we've been doing music solo individually for a while, but to do it in a group and a team is completely different. Mm-hmm. So I was a guitarist and a musician. I can't sing. He was a singer. And so we came together, we started doing the music. Then as we kept doing more and more, we realized there are gaps that we need to fill. So Awais actually knew Ahmed from back in the day. So he was like, all right, there's this other guy who's a good singer. He'll bring in a versatility and an energy to our sound. Why don't we bring him in? Okay, cool. We brought him in. And then we're like, okay, we need a beat to go along with our music, particularly if we're going to go in live. So Awais knew Tabish from somewhere. And then we spoke to Tabish and he's like, okay, cool. I'd love to join in. And then Tabish brought in Sarb because it's just kind of a story where
everyone kind of knew someone.
Everyone kind of knew someone.
That's
and
cool.
It was also the sound evolves. The more and more you play, the better you get at what you're doing. Your sound keeps evolving. Mm-hmm. And as it kept evolving, we realized there are gaps that we need to fill in. Mm-hmm. Now, thankfully, we're at a point where it's whatever gaps need to be filled in, we can fill it in internally. Otherwise, we'd have a big problem going to other interviews. because like fitting 6 people is kind of a problem.
Yeah,
already.
I think we're at the quota,
We're-
right?
We're
No more.
capped out. We're capped out. We're not going any further than this. But
Amazing.
yeah.
Okay, so what would you describe as your style of music?
I think our genre right now, like the way our songs are coming out, the direction that we have is pop rock. That's
Pop rock.
mainly our thing. But we're not limiting ourselves to that. I think modern music is evolving at such a rapid speed. Like every year you see like a new form of music come up, and there's a lot of like fusion stuff happening in the world. We get our inspiration from platforms like Coke Studio, for example. And this year's Coke Studio, this last one, was amazing, right? It was incredible, and it was such a good blend of like Western music and Eastern music. And that's sort of inspirational for us, because seeing that and how there's so much work that happens in terms of practicing your vocals and your singing, but there's also a technical side to things like production and making sure that you're putting out songs that sound good when someone's listening to it in their cars or at home and stuff. So that's really our target. We have we're lucky that we have Hayan, who has a production background as well, and we know we have a really good network of people that we work with. We have Ramiz as well, who's done production before. So all together, the group kind of formed organically, but everyone here brings in a lot of value in their own unique sense. So the gaps that were filled were value-based, but we also happen to really click well with each other. We have like lots of chemistry because we know each other from here and there, right?
I think that's important for any band. I think you need that chemistry and mutual respect. Otherwise, everyone's kind of like going in all directions. Before we continue, who came up with the band name? Because that's like the first step when you're like, okay, we're doing this. Now you're like, what do we call ourselves?
So that one is a little bit funny. When Oasis and I were doing music in the beginning, it was mostly for just like, we're just having fun. And then when we decided to go serious, we sat down. We're like, hey, we kind of need to come up with a name. And we had like a laundry list of options, and we didn't like any of them. Well, okay, not we didn't like any of them. I would love one, and he would hate it. And then he would love one, and I'd be like, that's garbage. We're not doing that. But then we came on this one, and things haven't changed. We still have those. But we came across this one, and Raavi is a Farsi word, which means storytellers. So we realized that all of us have very diverse taste in music. We align on some, we don't align on others. But the one thing that all of us have always held constant is that we love when music tells a story.
Yeah.
So that's why it resonated with us. And that's where we got the name. We're just like, okay, cool, that's it.
Okay, love it. So we get the band together, we come up with the name, we're like, okay, we're gonna do pop rock. We know what we're all about, guys. So then let's talk about putting out that first single, right? Getting that first gig. So who wants to talk about that? Because now you gotta get out there and let people know you're a band.
The first single, okay. So the first single that we put out, well, we did a bunch of gigs. Some were good, some were not good.
So you first started performing gigs before you started doing your original music?
Kind of lightly, yeah, because it was still COVID, and then there was those like soft openings of things where they had like, okay, cool, you can have 10 people in a room now. So we went to a few little events, and some of them went really well, some of them went really bad, but that's part of the learning experience.
What was really bad about it?
Somebody
Somebody forgot the lyrics.
No, it wasn't like that. We didn't. I think it was more that as we've played and we've matured, we've realized what we should be playing. Because sometimes you can like a song, but it doesn't just sound good, right? It doesn't work with the crowd, and it also doesn't sound good in your own tone. So we had a few moments where we're like, oh, this is an incredible song. It's going to be amazing. And then it really wasn't. It's like we finished a song and we're expecting like applause, and it's just pitch silence. So that's an amazing moment as an artist, because they're like, yeah, I'm really bad at this. But we had a few of those. But all of that turned into a learning experience. And then we did this little sit-down session where like, okay, cool. We don't want to be cover artists, right? We want to do our original work. We have an original sound. We have a desire to do original work. So let's do that. So we sat down, Oasis and I sat down, and we talked about it extensively. What if we do this? What if we do that? And then there was this song that I had written a while ago. And there was me and him and a couple of other people in the room, and I showed them that, and they're like, okay, cool. This is what we're going to work on. And then we just took a leap. And to be honest, we took a really big leap, because we kind of jumped 10 steps in between, and we didn't go through any of that. We're just like, all right, cool, we're just going to start producing this from scratch. And I did the production, Oasis and I did the production and composition. And it was a very complicated process. It took us 9 months to make that one song.
9 months.
Start
So
to
how
finish
long
that.
does it normally take for a song
Well,
to get produced?
not that long. Usually, if you're looking at independence, you're talking about a month or two, maybe 3.
Oh, wow.
But like, this was a very, very lengthy process, and we turned it into like a whole orchestral story, right? So it was an incredible experience because we made a lot of connections along the way. We met a lot of people. We learned so much because it's one of those situations. You jump out of your comfort zone and you're surprised by how much you get to learn being out of that situation. But that went over really well. We made a video for it. We launched it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, everything.
Yeah.
And it did really well. So then we kind of got that taste of doing original work. And then we're like, all right, cool, we can't go back. So now we're just hammering on with doing more and more originals.
Yeah.
And that one was just the 2 of us. Now we have 6 people. And these 4 other guys, they bring in a lot of experience and a really great sense of music on their own. So the work and the speed at which we're getting work done now, it's ridiculous.
Of course, you get to know each other and know how things work. What about you two fellas here? Tell me a little bit about then what are some music styles you'd like to work on, or maybe even the next single? I hear we are working on some other singles. So what is it like actually putting an album together?
It's actually a lot of fun. There's a dynamic process of just how, the gentleman in the front were explaining about how we bring in different contributions with our sound. So me and Sarb go way back. Like we're childhood friends, so our music taste is very similar. So when we start jamming with Wes and Hayan, there was a nice dynamic that we were bringing in because they were more like how they mentioned before, that kind of pop sound. We were bringing in more kind of like that indie rock side. As a drummer, in the community at least, it's a tight-knit community, with the South Asian community, that is. So everyone kind of knows everyone, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. So I've jammed with a lot of different bands before, and there's different sounds out there. So once I started drumming with these guys here, there was a different experience because they were doing something that was a little bit different, was modern, rather than that your 90s rock type of sound. So what we're doing right now with our music is kind of creating a fusion between modern rock and kind of like hard rock as well at the same time. So it kind of gives you that dynamic that I was talking about.
That's a great point that you made, and actually I noticed that. I was like, the South Asian music scene, you're right, we're very tight here. Everybody knows each other, especially if you focus on Canada. But then I don't really see a lot of I would say South Asian bands.
Right.
And so it's interesting because you got you guys, so first of all, you don't see usually a big band, and then you're doing this sort of pop rock, something very different.
Right.
So that's why I was like, when you're out there trying to get booked for gigs or trying to get that headlining slot, you're up against competition. And I was like, what are you guys doing to make sure you stand apart from other groups or from other musicians? Do you find that's a struggle, or do you find there is room for everybody and everyone's like, hey, we'll give you a slot here. We're more than willing to give you a chance.
Yeah, so like how Obeis was mentioning before, because there's no competition per se, at least from what we've noticed, we look online and see what the South Asian community in other parts of the world are doing. So Coke Studio is one example, for example, because what they're doing is exactly that, is bringing that modern sound to rock music, because that's what really, we feel connects us all. When we're in a studio, when we're jamming, it gets really heavy, but then we're like, okay, well, how do we dial that shift so that it's relevant for a larger audience as well, rather than a smaller niche group of people. So yeah, that's pretty much essentially what we're doing right now. It's a lot of trial and error, but we're trying to experiment with different genres, like how they were mentioning before, to see what works, what isn't working. How can we, affect a mass audience where they connect to our music much better in our storytelling. So a lot of our music it's not just the music itself. It's also the lyrics. It has to be deep rooted, where because everyone understands music differently. Some people, they hear the guitars only because they're really passionate about it, or some people listen to the drums only because they're like, okay, this is a nice beat. Sometimes you don't need a nice beat. Sometimes there's music where you're just focusing on the lyrics because it connects to you at a different wavelength than just the music itself. So right now what we're doing is kind of looking at it at a finer, a level where we're looking at that balance of lyrics and music at the same time.
But is it gonna be like, are we love songs here, party songs, like,
Definitely-
anthem songs?
Definitely party songs for sure. We like to party.
I
But
think it's good to bring diversity,
lo-
and
I
that's
mean,
what we're gonna try and
yeah,
do.
it's in its experiences, right? So like one time we'll be writing lyrics and it'll be really focused on love or a party song or something really dark and and obscure. You don't know. Like it can go in different directions.
This is gonna be such an interesting album because I'm like, I feel like
So-
all you guys are so different that I'm like, someone's gonna have the heartbreak, someone's gonna be like, I'm just so excited, I just graduated. Someone's gonna be like, oh, I don't like the cold and I want to have a song about the cold. So there's so many things you guys could do.
It depends on what the mood is of the day. So we'll walk into a jam and we'll be like, what do we feel like today? Or it's not even like we have a discussion about this. One of us is gonna walk in, he'll start singing something and we're like, all right, cool, I guess that's what we're doing. Or I'll start playing something, it's like, okay, cool, this is what we're working on. So we have a bunch of songs, and we were actually talking about this, that our next 4 songs that we're working on are they're all over the place in terms of the feel for them. They obviously still have that signature sound, which is us, but one is a party song, one is a really dark song, one is like a really thoughtful.
I'm so curious
One-
about
one
this
is
dark
a-
song
one is a-
now. I'm like,
one
how
is a-
dark
by the
are we
way,
going?
We have a Latin song too.
We have a Latin song
right?
in there,
So
yeah.
we're
Okay, I
experimenting.
like it.
Yeah, we have Bhangra in there, like, yeah, we're.
Oh, we really are doing the fusion thing. Wow.
Oh, no,
all
we really
over.
are, because like
Amazing.
that's the point. But there's 6 of us,
Yeah.
so we all bring in something different. It's like, okay, cool, that sounds good regardless. So let's work on it.
We also have a song that not just caters to the youth, but also the aunties out there. So
Yes.
just letting.
Important demographic.
We're not.
Is it
discriminating
an
against-
anthem for the aunties?
Trust me, when this one comes out, I'm looking forward to this with the guys. We're working on it.
Amazing.
It'll be a fun one.
Well, with that being said, I actually wanted to give our viewers a little taste. So now I know there's this song for the aunties. I don't know if you want to give us a taste of that, or maybe another single.
I think the single that we have prepared, the auntie one is, it's in the works. It's in the works, but it'll be a fun one. I guarantee you that one.
So which single are you gonna perform a little bit about? Tell us a
Yeah,
little
we
about
can we can do a little teaser.
it. What's it called and what's the story behind it? Just give us a
That's
little
a good
background.
one. So the song is called Lapata, and I think it is a little bit of, there is a bit of darkness in the song, but it was also inspired by the whole pandemic experience. I think partly that, and partly just I think your experience of growing up as a first generation kind of kid in North America, like trying to figure out life.
Who you are.
Yeah, who you are, and finding meaning to things. So it's about that, and that's why Lapata, lost, kind of, that's the theme of the song.
Okay.
And yeah, it's in the works right now. We did perform it live in a few of our live events, but the production's underway for this summer, so we can give you a little snippet
Amazing.
of
We
the
get a
song.
little sneak peek.
Like
Okay,
an
so here you
acoustic
go. Take it
version
away,
of it.
guys.
रातें ख्याली हैं, तारे सवाली हैं, मंजिल दिखती नहीं है। आँखों में सपने हैं, राहों में अपने हैं, सब कुछ है फिर क्यों कमी है। लिपटा खामोशी में, जिंदा मदहोशी में, कोई सदा तो सुना दो। तूफान में, बारिश में, भोली गुजारिश में, मिलते कहाँ हो बता दो। पहचान क्या है, गुमान क्या, मेरा साया कहाँ खो गया। ये ख्याल क्या है, सवाल क्या, मैं हूँ खुद में कहीं लापता।
Amazing. Great job, guys. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so if our viewers want to follow you, they want to check you out, maybe plug your website, How can they check you out?
Yes, so we are on all platforms, dominantly on Instagram. So our handle is Raavi.theband, so RAAVI.theband. And we're also on YouTube, Spotify. Our song the original we released last year. It's called Tere Nain. It's also on Spotify, Apple Music, all the audio platforms
everywhere.
there are.
It's
It's everywhere.
And fellas, before I let you go, then I also want to make sure we inspire the next generation of musicians, right? So maybe there's some guys like you that, are interested in performing and they just maybe haven't figured out a way to get out there, or maybe they're like, hey, I want to put together my own band. So best piece of advice you would share with other folks?
I think we all have different advices
Absolutely,
to give.
yeah.
But one consistent advice I think that everyone can agree upon here is it's persistence. I think that's one thing that we cannot stress enough on. If you have a guitar at home and you've been wanting to learn, pick it up, do a little bit of that every day a little bit, and just be persistent. Consistency is the key here. Don't be shy to put yourself up on social media and stuff. Initially, it's hard, but it's daunting. I get that. We've been there. I was a really shy, introverted kid. I did that and went through it. So everyone can do it. I hope our story inspires you a little bit.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That was Raavi The Band. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much for
Thank
having
you.
us. Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you, Vibrant.
I'm your host, Amin Dylan, and today I'm sitting down with visual artist Bhavya Tandon. Bhavya, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Well, thanks so much for being on this episode. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get right into it. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a visual artist. I'm 20 years old, and I'm currently in my third year of university.
Great. And you mentioned visual artist, so let's talk about that journey. How did you get into that?
I would say that I've always been a pretty visual person, like a visual learner, just generally. That's how my mind works. And I have a very easy time visualizing images as well. So growing up, I was always pretty creative. But I think I only started to take art seriously over the past few years, starting with the pandemic, because I had a lot of time alone to reflect and to work on art.
What do you mean when you say taking art seriously?
I mean, only recently I've started to think about pursuing art as a career. But in terms of just taking art seriously, I mean, producing art at a consistent rate, I guess. I think that's what I'd call it. Or having a certain level, I guess. I wanted that my artworks to reflect a level of care and time that I didn't previously care about before.
Mm-hmm. So you were mentioning as you're growing up, you were scribbling. I think a lot of people can identify with that, right? All of us like to scribble and, do artwork, use coloring books. But then it's another thing to actually come up with your own piece. So do you remember the very first piece you ever made?
I don't know what I would call my first piece ever. I think that my first large drawing that I remember being proud of and hanging up in my room, that was the first time that I took a nail to one of my paintings and I hung it up on my wall because I really liked it. It was on this styrofoam panel that I got from Dollarama, and that's what that one's made on as well. So if I wanted to sell it, it would be worth absolutely nothing. But yeah, it was a drawing of this angel sort of wrapping its wings around this girl, and I really like it.
And what inspired you to make that?
I think I was just feeling low and I wanted to believe in, I guess, the guardian angel sort of concept. It was comforting.
So do you feel like at that time you were feeling low, you turned to art, and then you drew this piece that you were proud enough that you were like, I'm going to hang this up. So did you find that perhaps that was what really drew you to it, that it was a way of therapy?
Yeah, I find that I do that a lot. I turn to art when I'm not feeling well, not when I'm at my lowest, I would say, because there's still a level of planning that's required to create art and energy. So there's always a period of reflection when I am experiencing intense emotions where I'm not able to create art, but then after I'm able to gather my thoughts, then yeah, I do turn to art.
Very important question. That first piece, is it still hanging up on your wall?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, good.
I
So
don't
that's the
change my
piece you're
room
always going to
often.
keep around.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I'm still proud of it, which is nice.
Yeah. So then after that first piece, you see it on your wall, you go, hey, like I've got something here. So then do you get consistent and start creating content on the regular basis, or was there a little bit of a gap?
I wanted to fill up the rest of my walls with art, and now there's not a single wall in my room that doesn't have art on it. There's just like sketches and paintings hanging everywhere. So it's nice.
And what do you feel inspires you to make your next piece?
Again, just generally when I'm experiencing a new emotion or an intense kind of emotion, I guess I turn to art as a way to process that. Or when I discover a new idea or philosophy that inspires me. A painting that I'm working on now is about this girl thinking about different versions of herself. And I guess what inspired me to create that is the fact that in university, I sort of feel like I'm in a kind of limbo where I'm not a kid and I'm not in high school, but I'm not an adult and I don't have a real job and I haven't moved out of my parents' place. So I feel kind of like I'm just in this limbo and I feel stuck. So sometimes I think about what my life is going to look like after university and all the different versions of myself, and that's what inspired me to create that.
That's so interesting because I feel like a lot of people can relate to that, where you're in that stage of going, what am I doing with my life? What does my future look like? Am I even on track, right? And I think a lot of times you end up comparing yourself to others and thinking, oh, like, should I be doing this? Or am I right where I should be? So it sounds like instead of, how some people talk about what they're worried about or, they write it down for you, you express yourself or maybe process what you're feeling by just making art.
Yeah. Sometimes I write it down as well, but I think with art, there's just like images can evolve and they can take on different meaning, and words can't do the same thing. So it's more open to interpretation.
And do you find when you're creating a painting that, let's say you're feeling something in that moment, once you're done, do you feel like in a way you've maybe even found a solution for yourself, or maybe just by the end of it, you feel like you've processed that feeling and you're ready to move on?
Yeah, I would say it's more about processing a feeling. I don't think it's necessarily a solution. I wish it were. But yeah, some things are too complicated for that.
So there's one thing for you to be drawing in your bedroom, right? But now you've actually gone professional and you've been displaying your pieces as well. So what was that first moment where you were able to really get that big break and showcase your art?
The first time I showcased my art was at VASA's annual showcase this past summer. And I showcased one of my paintings that I didn't bring today because I didn't want to repeat it. But yeah, it was a really nice sort of ceremony and event, and it was a memory and a milestone that I'll always look back to fondly.
And how did you learn about Vasa?
I actually learned about it through my mom, and she encouraged me to go and apply. Yeah.
And was that an easy decision, or were you maybe hesitant?
I was pretty hesitant, yeah.
Why?
Because I'd never shown my art before, and I don't consider myself a professional, and I hesitate to even call myself an artist a lot of the time. So I don't know. I was worried that everybody there was going to be like 50, 60 years old with these like giant oil paintings, and then it would be me with my like tiny acrylic painting, and I don't know. Yeah.
So what made you then feel comfortable actually then putting yourself out there and actually attending Vasa?
Well, I got one of my pieces got accepted, and I guess that gave me a boost of confidence.
Yeah.
So, yeah, of course I went.
I think a lot of people can identify with that because sometimes you think I'm not ready, or you go, oh, am I good enough? And so I think being able to then just put yourself out there and then be part of Vasa and have that experience. So just maybe walk us through that process. So you apply, you get accepted, and now what are you feeling? How do you prepare?
After I got accepted?
Yeah, it's your first exhibit. So as an artist putting yourself out there, how did you overcome that feeling of wondering if you're ready?
Again, just sort of getting my painting accepted, it gave me a boost of confidence, and my grandparents are visiting, and I guess they were so excited for me that I forgot to feel afraid, and they all went with me. We all piled in the car and went together, and it was nice to have all of that moral support. So.
And what was the reaction like when you attended, when people were checking out your art for the first time?
I felt really great. Yeah, it was really flattering when people looked at my art and thought that I was older than I actually was, and then they turned around and they saw me, and I'm just like this kid covered in tattoos, and I guess they were expecting like an adult to have painted it, and it was a really nice feeling.
Okay, so we've got something very special because you brought some of your art pieces for us, so it's right behind us. Would you mind walking us through these pieces?
Sure, yeah. So the blue one I think is the oldest one on there, and I made that by tearing apart an old canvas I had that I wasn't using, and I wasn't happy with what I'd painted on it. So I kind of I tore that up and I gessoed it onto a canvas, and then I painted over that. I wanted texture and I wanted a sort of mixed media feel. And
So that's one of the oldest pieces up here.
that's
How old were
definitely the
you when you
oldest
made
one.
that? Do you remember?
I think that was at the start of the pandemic, so I would say 17, 18, I don't know.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so that's kind of where you started off. So then what about the other pieces?
And then I made the skulls shortly after, I think like within the week or something after that, because I was just like, I had nothing to do, so I was producing a lot of art more than I am now for sure, because I'm really busy with my third year of university.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did the skulls next, and that one was just inspired by this silly dream that I had about these like skulls sitting around a poker table and like smoking and having a nice night out. And then the next one was the big panel. Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. That one was really challenging, and on the back side of it is my failed attempt at it, so I had to try again. But yeah, I think that's like a really big thing with art is that like you have to have multiple drafts sometimes, and an idea is not flawed or a concept shouldn't be thrown away just because the first draft wasn't good. So that's a piece of art that reminds me of that. Yeah.
So sorry, what do you consider that your most challenging piece of all the pieces up here?
I would say my most challenging was probably the portrait because I'm still figuring out skin tones and portraits and just like working with color and trying to, I guess, breathe life into my paintings, especially when it's like a person. It's a lot easier to draw things like flowers or sometimes animals even, but I guess with people, you know, I mean, we look at each other and we walk amongst ourselves every day. So when you look at a painting of a person and it seems off, then it's very noticeable. You know, when they seem dead or lifeless. So it's I'd say people and portraits. It's one of the hardest things, but it's also what I enjoy painting most.
What have been the biggest challenges of being an artist here?
So for the most part, I'm self-taught. Our classes can be really expensive, and so can art supplies. I think that's one of the big challenges for me. I recently took a short course in figure drawing, and that put me out about $650. So
Wow.
it was, yeah, it sucks that you have to break the bank to take those kinds of classes because there are a lot of people out there who have potential and who have true passion for art, but sometimes it feels like only the people who have money are really able to develop that talent, and that's extremely unfair.
And do you feel like there's resources out there that you were able to uncover that really helped you?
There are tutorials and things on YouTube and you know some resources out there for me to turn to, definitely. And I've in going to school downtown and in meeting a lot of creative people, I've sort of found a little community of artists, so that's nice as well.
Yeah. And one thing I want to touch upon, and you mentioned this before, of how you even got your first opportunity to exhibit was because of your mom. And I know your mom is also an artist as well. So what role do you think family plays in supporting people like you that are creative, that are wanting to pursue these sort of creative passions and turn into a professional career? What role does family play in that for you?
Yeah, I think having family or close friends, anyone really like close to you who's passionate about art and passionate about supporting you is really great. It's very motivating, and it's there are a lot of people out there who think that pursuing art is a waste of time, and a lot of people out there who you know, say very discouraging things, or it's just like the general mindset, right? Of like, oh, you can't pursue art because then you'll be a starving artist. So having your family support you is a really big deal. And my family didn't always support me, like not in the beginning of me deciding to pursue art, but they've come around, and it's really great. And it's very motivating, and I don't want to have to fight with my parents to create art and to create things that make me feel good.
Yeah, and I think that's important to mention because I think there might be someone watching this that maybe is in the same boat as you that wants to pursue art, and sometimes, you know, the family has other plans for them, or maybe they're feeling discouraged that, can I make it here? So it's nice to hear that it's not just something that you're feeling. It happens to many of us, right? When we say artist, it's very open-ended, right? So it can be quite scary and uncertain. So before I let you go, what's your best piece of advice for anyone who's watching who wants to pursue art as a career?
Well, you said that it can be scary and uncertain, but I think that it's all about your mindset. So there's no clear-cut path for it, and I don't know. I am somebody who likes to have a plan, and I used to want to go into law precisely because it's a very clear-cut path. You know, you get your undergrad, you pass the LSAT, you go to law school, you pass the bar, you do whatever, and then like by step 8 or 9, you're a lawyer. Bam, like you're set for life. With art, it is very open-ended, and there's no clear-cut path, but that just means that there's endless opportunities. So it's about rewiring your mindset and just being okay with uncertainty.
Great. Thank you for that advice, and thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm your host, Amin Dylan, and today I'm sitting down and getting to know the artist, John Maksym. John, how's it going?
Going very well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
And it's nice to meet you in person because I got to meet you virtually at V-Star, but now finally in person, we're together.
2021.
Yeah, and you won.
We're very fortunate to be part of the contest or competition, and just felt honored to get welcomed to the stage and eventually welcome to the festival stage last summer.
Of course, and you get to be known to our audience and to me, and it grows as you continue on. So we're going to get into all of that, but let's go back to the very, very, very beginning. Very beginning. Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, born and raised in Kitchener, and Ukrainian background. My grandparents immigrated after World War II, I believe. My parents are first-generation Canadians, and big music fans. My dad had a huge record collection, and I'd say about, from as far back as I remember, about 3 years old, he started playing his records and showing me them. And I really took a liking to Bruce Springsteen. And I would jump on the couch singing Born in the USA and Dancing in the Dark and Glory Days. So the hit songs from the 80s. And my parents got me a red toy guitar and a mic, and it came with a stand as well. And I took that and I dressed up with like a Superman cape and I put a mask on, and then I would jump around on the couch pretending I was a superstar on stage. So at a very, very young age, I got inspired by music. It just kind of happened, and my parents just supported me through it the whole time.
I love that. And I love the fact that when you were so young, you just knew you wanted to do this.
Yeah, it's weird because I didn't know that I wanted to do this. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
And then years later, like looking back, hindsight's 2020, and I can see where all the connections were made and all the dots. Because I did want to be a Toronto Blue Jay as a youngster as well. I got into baseball at a young age.
You're like rock star or baseball player?
Yeah. And, baseball kind of tapered off in my teens. I got into skateboarding, but music just kind of stayed the entire time. And I got into my first guitar lessons at 11 years old, started a band at 13, and I've been playing ever since. It's been 26 years being on stage.
Wow. So 13 years old,
yes.
You started your first band.
Yeah.
Wow. And then look at you now. Fast forward, you're still
doing
performing and you still perform with the band.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then that means, let's say once you're done high school.
Yeah.
What do you do after high school? That's when you're like on your own, right? Now you're like, okay, what am I going to do? So Did you pursue music then?
I attempted to, actually. So grade school started the band, got into high school, members changed. We had a 5-year band through high school, put out an album, and then got into college. And I tried to get into the Fanshawe Music Industry Arts program.
Yeah.
And I was put on a wait list. And back then, this was early 2000s, and they had tons and tons of applicants and not many spots in the program. So ultimately, I decided to go to Conestoga College just for general business, and which played a big part in how I was able to grow my music career later down the road, being familiar with business practices, marketing, learning how to write proper emails, things like that. So it played a big part, but I didn't get into school for music like I'd hoped. And then it changed the trajectory of everything I was doing, because I was planning on moving to London, Ontario to attend Fanshawe, and I ended up staying in Kitchener. And then I started a college band at the time, and we played for 3 years, put out an album with that band, and it kind of opened the door to a lot of opportunities. That band in the local music scene in KW ended up becoming fairly popular.
Yeah.
And we would sell out small venues and bring a lot of friends and fans out to shows and stuff. And it gave us some credibility. So when that band ended, I had about a year off in between for my next one. But while I was working on material and meeting some new musicians and that, there were a lot of people that came to me that wanted to play music with me because of the prior success that I'd had. So I thought that was a pretty incredible place to be in, and started a band in my early 20s called Breaching Vista that went 13 or 14 years and wrapped up in 2019. And that's when I decided to go solo.
Okay, so let's go back, because I
there's
heard you say this. There's a lot of information,
yeah.
but I was like really shocked that in high school you put out an album.
Yes, that was a goal I set for myself. There was one band when I was in grade 9. There was an older band that was graduating that year, and they had put out an album. And I looked at that as, well, if they can do it, I can do it. You know, so that was my goal through 5 years of high school. Was by the end of graduation, by the time I was graduating, I wanted to have a CD, because CDs were huge at the end of the 90s, early 2000s, and that was the thing. That was like the be all end all. Have a CD out. And we ended up pulling it off. In our last year, we got into the studio, we recorded the album, and by the end of the year, we did the CD release party, and then the band broke up.
What again is incredible that you were able to put out a CD, right?
Yeah,
Because it costs money. You gotta dedicate the time to get into the studio, record, promote it, right? So as a high school student, you already had that like business hat on.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And actually, in high school, I ended up working at a recording studio part time as a co-op program.
Oh, wow.
So I got to know a lot of the behind the scenes. You know how some of the how bands operated in the studio, how studios operated, and a lot about the gear. And the owners, it was called Studio A Mirador at the time. The owners, Ron and Katie, they really took me under their wing and gave me a lot of guidance and mentorship. And ultimately, when it was time to record, we ended up recording with a friend of ours. His name's Matty Kay. He was, I would call him a legendary sound guy in the Kitchener music scene. I still talk to him to this day. But we recorded in his dad's basement for $10 an hour. Which was affordable for high school kids at the time. And then at the end of it, once we got it mixed, I brought it to Studio A, and Ron mastered it for us, just kind of as like a favor.
That is so nice. So isn't that like great that many people would think, how does a high school student pull off putting together a CD, right? An album.
Yeah.
And not only did you, first of all, I think it's great that you were interning at a music studio. I think if you know this is where you are looking to pursue, why not learn from people? And a lot of people are willing to teach you, right?
Oh,
maybe
absolutely.
it has to be part-time, maybe it has to be as an internship, but a lot of people will take on that extra help, and then you get to learn firsthand.
Oh yeah, just being in that environment opens up so many doors in your eyes to so many things about how everything is done professionally.
Yeah, it's like the best education, just like on
just
set,
being in there
the
and
studio.
doing it. Yeah,
exactly. So can I ask you though, do you remember how much money that first album cost?
Yeah,
because it sounds intimidating. I think album sounds like a lot of money.
It's funny because I remember reading in a guitar magazine, Guitar World or something. There was an interview years ago, back in the 90s. I think it was Kurt Cobain from Nirvana who talked about how to make a CD you needed $2,000 or something. And I remember reading, and that was like insurmountable amount of money at the time. You know, as a high school kid, you're working. I think I was making like $6-7 an hour at my part-time job. You're thinking $2,000 to make a record. And we ended up recording it with about $400 because our friend $10 an hour was a really, good deal at the time. But when we got the manufacturing done of the CDs and that, the bill in the end was $2,000 to get the manufacturing done, the artwork and everything else. So the recording was the cheapest part, but it did cost about $2,000, and we just saved our money. We ran a fundraising show. I think we made about $500 that night to go towards the album.
That's resourceful.
Yeah, our friends' bands played with us, and they didn't ask for any money. They just were raising money for our band was called Klutz at the time. So this is the Klutz fundraising show, to get the album done. And one of my best friends, Kat, she ended up working in the industry for a while at a record label, years, going through her 20s and that. But back in high school, we used to promote shows together. We would just book a venue and put out hand flyers and stuff like that, sell tickets. So Kat helped us run the show. And again, she didn't take a cut either. So it was just everyone kind of jumped in to support us, and we raised the funds to get the job done.
Which is incredible. I think having a supportive community where everyone can just say, hey, how can I just help you get to that end goal? That really means a lot.
It's kind of like crowdfunding today.
I was thinking that,
Now it's done online. Back then it was rally all the troops and get them to come out for a night. And we were so young, there was no alcohol sales or anything like that. We didn't have any merch, no t-shirts or anything. It was just like we could sell tickets.
And you made $500 bucks.
We made $500
like to me,
bucks.
that's a lot of money for a show.
Yeah, I can't remember how many people came out, but the venue holds probably 250, and we probably came close to selling it out.
Yeah, so I like that sort of hustle mentality where you're like, okay, I know I want to make an album. I'm not going to let these obstacles of money or, being able to get access and even finding someone to manufacture the album. I'm thinking in high school, I wouldn't know how to do that. So
again,
amazing.
Studio A stepped up and they helped us with their connections there.
Yeah.
They basically facilitated all of that for us, but it came at a cost. Everything costs.
Of course.
Money these
days. But just being able to do that, because I think then you put that out and then people listen and become a fan, follow you, and then you grow as an artist. So I feel like for you to work at that music studio was really the moment that kind of set you on this path to making music as a career, a reality.
It definitely opened up the idea that you can make money doing this. You can have a career in this. In fact, another goal I set when I started working at the studio was someday I want to have my own home studio. I didn't care about having a commercial space so much, but I wanted to just have a studio space in my own home that I could record in anytime I wanted to.
Yeah.
And ultimately I got there.
Well, it's going to be very handy, right? As you're producing music.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was high school.
Yes.
Already, I think you hit it out of the ballpark there. Then you go to university, you have a new band there, you put out another album. So was it still the same way as what you did in high school, or did you step it up?
We took a lot of the same practices at that time. Although that was a transition into digital music. So when I was in high school was when Napster came out. And file sharing and downloading and things like that. So we started, it really didn't have a shift or an impact at that point in time. We started seeing things happen differently, and you got your own website now and stuff. And that wasn't, something that wasn't attainable. We had friends in graphic design and web design. So they helped us, build a website, and then we got merchandise with that second band, and we sold a ton of t-shirts. We were constantly calling our local t-shirt company up, like, we need another order, guys. We sold out last week. So we went through a ton of merchandise, and then we toured through all over Ontario and Quebec. So we stepped it up in that way, and we just kind of expanded and grew. We were getting in, like, we were in our early 20s and that. We were buying vehicles, and we had our license and stuff, so we could get ourselves to our own shows now instead of our parents driving us.
Yeah.
It was a huge growth moment in life during those few years there.
Why do you think that time and that band was more popular than what you were doing in high school? Because you were touring now, you're selling out merchandise. It seems like things were going really well. What was it about that shift?
It was the sound. There's I like to think of it as like a music pendulum that just kind of swings back and forth. And you hear about music cycles happening where alternative rock was huge in the 90s. Nirvana helped open up those doors. That was coming out of an era where the 80s had the hair metal bands, and they also had a lot of the synth music, the retro style stuff. And then people wanted something a little angrier, a little grittier, and alternative rock came out of that, and then it turned into punk rock and pop punk and things like that. So at that turn, pop punk was really popular, but then shifting into a genre we call emo. And emo was the punk rock ethos of having this do-it-yourself mentality, and we can take on the world and no one can stop us kind of thing. But the music got more melodic sounding, and the songs were, about relationships and stuff instead of whatever you're writing about in high school kind of thing, So there's a lot of emotion attached to it in that. So we ended up becoming this emo band, for lack of a better term, right when emo music was starting to kind of take off, and people just resonated with it and they gravitated towards us. So we had a couple independent record labels talking to us at that time that wanted to work with us and everything. And unfortunately, the band personalities, we just couldn't keep it together with each other. There was a lot of opportunity. We saw a lot, a lot down the path that we could have gone together. But at the same time, there was a lot of clashing personalities, and it wasn't going to work out in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up parting ways and doing our own things.
Okay, so you part ways, and then how do you get into your next band?
Well, I ended up having a bit of a down year. It was 2005, 5 and 6. I ended 05. I left that band because we weren't agreeing on stuff, and I just couldn't be part of. There was a lot of negative energy in it, so I moved on, and I started to write some acoustic songs. And I thought I'll just be a solo artist at that time. And a friend of mine, he wanted to be he was a drummer, but he wanted to drum for me. So we started just playing a couple shows, acoustic and drums, and we were auditioning bass players. And we couldn't find a bass player to stick. And we spent about a year doing that, and it got exhausting just trying people, and nothing was happening. He ultimately just kind of started fading out and doing his own thing, keeping to himself. And I got tired of playing my acoustic, and I thought, I want to plug in my Marshall amp again. I want to rock. So a couple friends of mine from high school called me up and said, "Hey, are you free in like 2 weeks? We have a show booked and our singer can't make it. Can you come up and play some Green Day and Blink songs with us and just have like a bar night?" I thought, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to do this. And I get out there, we do this show, and everybody absolutely loved it. All their friends came up to me, and their band was called Radcliffe at the time. And they're like, "Are you the new singer for Radcliffe?" And I said, no, I'm not trying to take over for the other guy. I'm just here to have fun. And then there was a girl that was having a Stag and Doe coming up that was at that night. And she asked if we'd come play her Stag and Doe. And I said, yeah, I'll do it again. Sure. So we got hired. We actually got paid to come out and play this show. And after that, the guys and I started talking serious about, hey, do you want to keep doing this? And if so, that's cool. Let's get serious about playing. They obviously knew that I'd done a lot at that point in time. And this is what I was saying, people wanted to come to me to play music, which I felt, honored. So I said to them, well, if this is what we're going to do, we have to make some changes, and we're going to get this thing up and going and sailing. And one of the changes, unfortunately, was the bass player that they had in their band. He was the weakest member, I would say, and not really a bass player, so to speak. He just played the bass because they needed somebody to play bass in the band. And I said, look, I know the drummer that was playing with me also played bass. And I was like, I know a guy that can play bass really well. And I really trust this guy. He's one of my good friends. We'd spent a year playing music together already. I want to call him and bring him into this. If we're starting this thing and I'm going to get serious about it, then I need to bring in some of my people and stuff, some of the things. And so the guys agreed. Unfortunately, we had to part ways with the one friend, but it wasn't serious yet at that point. And I call up my friend Mike, and I said, "Hey, I got a new band I'm starting up. We need a bass player. Will you come out?" And he said, "No, I want to play drums." And then hung up the phone on me. And I thought, okay, well, that's not going to work. We'll leave him alone. So we started jamming, and about 2 weeks go by, I think, and I called him back up because we're having jam sessions in my basement, and there's no low end. We need to get a bass. So I call Mike back up, and before I can be like, come on, man, he's like, yeah, I'm in. And I said, what? And he goes, I'm in. And I'm like, well, okay, that's great. What happened? He's like, well, I thought about it, and I just really want to play music. So if you guys need a bass player, I'll play bass. And he's really good at bass too. So I know he wants to play drums, but man, you're a good bass player, come in. So, and we started Breaching Vista, it was called, that night. That was in about this time, third week of January 2007. And we went to 2019.
Wow,
that was all the way to the end of December. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And then after that, what happened?
Again, it's one of those moments where lives change. So you spend over a decade going in from your 20s into your 30s, playing music with the same people, and everyone's starting to go off, buy houses, get married, have kids, different life things happening, and you start drifting apart in your musical style and what interests you and things like that. So we're still friends. In fact, we were texting each other 2 days ago. We have a group chat that we still communicate with each other quite a bit. But it was just time. I was writing songs that I didn't feel sounded like Breaching Vista, and I didn't really want to bring them to the band because the band felt like it had run out of steam. The energy wasn't there again. Everyone's kind of going off in their own directions, and I thought, I'm going to hang on to these songs and I'm going to do something else with them. And I wasn't sure at the time in 2019, but I thought, I'm just going to sit on these for a bit. And then we went through a few different drummers in that band, and the last drummer that we had, he was a pilot. and he got a job. He was at a small airport in Burlington, and he got a job with WestJet and had to move to Calgary. So in October 2019, he said, "Hey guys, I have to leave the band at the end of the year. I start in January in Calgary. I have to move." And we thought, this is a good time to just wrap things up, put a bow on it. And we all talked and everyone agreed. So we put a farewell show together December 27th. And we just ended the year off. Last show, sold out a venue in Waterloo and had a big party.
Wow. Okay. Sounds like a lot of great music coming up for us and for you. So thank you so much for coming on the show
Thanks for
and
having
chatting with
me.
us and sharing your journey. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
That was amazing getting to know some of your favorite local artists and their individual journeys. I hope you feel like you got to know them a little bit better in this episode of My Art, My Story. Now, a big thank you to all of our partners and sponsor, because without their generous support, none of this would be possible. So a big thank you to our main project funder of My Art, My Story, Canada Council for the Arts. A special thanks to all of our media partners, including Metroland Media Group, ATN, and Canadian Immigrant Magazine. A big thank you to our community partners, Downtown Brampton BIA, Brampton Library, Visual Arts Mississauga, Mississauga Music, the Peel Art Gallery Museum and Archives, Visual Arts Brampton, Brampton Arts Coalition Committee, Bose Arts Gallery, Peel Police, Stop Diabetes Foundation, Courtyard by Mary Brampton, and Bombay Bale Mississauga. And a big thank you to all of you for tuning into this episode. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode of My Art, My Story, the journey behind the art. We'll see you next time.